You are listening to Leading the Factory Forward with your host, Lynn Friest. We share interviews with manufacturing experts and strategies for embracing the digital future, recruiting a new workforce, finding new business. Lynn is an advanced manufacturing strategist and leadership consultant who is on a mission to show manufacturing leaders how to improve their current operations while preparing for a digital future. And here's your host, Lynn Friest.
Welcome to this episode of Leading the Factory Forward. This is episode 68, and it's insight from manufacturers with Jeff Allspaugh of the IMEC Group. Our goal in Leading the Factory Forward is to help you create a compelling future for yourself, your teams, and your organization. I encourage you to visit my website and download the summary at the bottom of the podcast episode, and you can use that as a tool to capture any notes or ideas as you start exploring the ideas from this episode. Or to help you get started on your journey and to stay up to date on new episodes, you can download the free worksheet, 3 Steps You Need for a More Productive Workday. I'm delighted today to have Jeff. He's the Regional Manager with the Illinois Manufacturing Excellence Center, and he is here to share with us things that they've been learning as they've talked to manufacturers throughout Illinois during this crazy year. Some of the things we'll cover are, who is IMEC? Jeff will introduce who they are, an overview of their mission, some of their expertise, and identify some of the top areas of service they have. He'll also talk about some of the coordination and collaboration that they do with chambers of commerce, economic development, college partners, and other manufacturing extension partners such as Cirrus in Iowa. Then Jeff is going to talk about what are the trends they're seeing. And he's going to talk about some of the top responses they've had from a series of assessments they've done with manufacturers. And it's going to come in 3 areas. They ask the manufacturers to describe things that are urgent, things that are immediate, and things that they need to focus on in the next 6 months. So to give you a preview of that, some of the things that we're going to talk about is how to create growth, how to ensure safety of the workplace and the employees, how to improve operational outcomes and productivity. And then finally, in many cases, most importantly, how do they handle workforce development, both in acquiring new employees and upskilling existing employees. Then the last thing he's going to cover is what kind of initiatives are available to Illinois manufacturers. So with that, we'll get ready to talk with Jeff. Welcome, Jeff, and thank you for meeting with us and sharing your insights and your perspectives with IMEC. And with that, I'll let you introduce yourself and IMEC.
Thanks, Lynn. It's a pleasure to be here with you and your audience. My name's Jeff Allspaugh. I'm the Regional Manager for Northwest Illinois for IMEC. IMEC is Illinois Manufacturer Excellence Center. And IMEC is part of the national MEP network, and I'll describe that in a bit. I've been in various roles of leadership for about 35 years now. A portion of it was spent in healthcare, coming up through operations in leadership. Leading into that, I received my bachelor's degree from Illinois State University in 1984. And then in 1992, I had the opportunity to go back and get an MBA at St. Ambrose University. So my heart is in the Quad Cities. So was my body for 3 years. And I live just east of the Quad Cities, between Sterling and Dixon and Rock Falls and the Quad Cities. So it is my service area, and I welcome it. I spent my time in healthcare, financial services, and a bit in agricultural production. And for the last 12 years or so, combined myself as an independent consultant and then as an employed consultant in agricultural production. So I've always kind of had that role of the fixer and finding areas where we can improve and making things better. And that was a natural progression to take this role at IMEC. And I've been at IMEC since August of 2019. I don't think I brought the pandemic with me, but it sure feels like it. IMEC, for those who aren't aware, is one of the manufacturing extension partnerships. There are 50 in the nation that is sponsored by the Department of Commerce. Each state has an MEP center, and ours happens to be IMEC in Illinois. And in Iowa, our partner over there is Cirrus. You may have heard of Cirrus, based at Iowa State University. The MEP network is committed to growing and helping manufacturing. It has been since its inception in the late 80s, a congressional inception, and the need for manufacturing was dominant and very evident. And at that time, the federal government wanted to make some investments in that to make sure that small manufacturers were addressed and jobs were created and retained. The Manufacturing Extension Partnership is, again, across the country. So within that, there are 1,400 employees like myself, either in roles of sales and business development or actual technical specialists that deliver the service. The benefit of that is we don't just see small areas, and a state may be a small area, but when we look to our partners in the MEP, there are rarely any situations that we have faced as a whole that are unique. So even if we're stumped on something and need a solution in, for instance, Illinois, we could look to Ohio, who may have started doing some of the mask sterilizations that we heard about in about April or May or so. The nice part about that is we have more to draw from. With that, we also partner with universities, local colleges, technical schools, economic development centers, technical associations, chambers of commerce, and the like to get the message out and actually help and make those businesses aware that we're out here and what we can do for them. Our focuses tend to be on leadership, strategy, customer engagement, operations, and workforce. We can go into that a little bit more, but that's the really broad level. Those are the things that we look for in business excellence and where we might be able to help each business.
Jeff, just the episode just before this one was with Mandy Parchert from the Iowa-Illinois Sector Board, and we talked about apprenticeships. So it's a nice dovetail into this. I know you were involved in that also. So it's great to see how all these organizations fit together.
Yeah, the struggle sometimes is the overlap. Everybody has their own footprint, and sometimes we don't even know it. And when you put yourself in the seat of the manufacturer, who do I turn to? So what we are trying to do is obviously position ourselves as well to be that trusted advisor. Who can I turn to help me either with my training, my education, potentially funding? How do I navigate this when I need help? And certainly you can pick up the yellow pages. What we used to do is pick up the yellow pages and find the consultant of choice and start that journey there. But in our world, we like to look at the whole picture and do assessments with the organization. And that can run down a couple of different ways. Some organizations know exactly what they need. I would like to have lean manufacturing and lean training, and I want you to plug it in. And these are the dates that we can do it. Others need more of a strategic approach. Look, we don't know what's wrong. We think this is it. Can you come in and take a look at it with your experience and your folks and see if this is exactly what we need? And if it is, then we can propose a solution. And then there's a third that they're running things just as well as they can, but maybe they're a little more forward-looking and say, come into my operation, take a look around, and tell me what my opportunities might be that I'm missing. So that's the three main thrusts of our service.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. I know in my conversations, a couple of the forward-looking companies, they said, I don't know what I don't know here. I need to talk to an IMEC or somebody to even just let me know what's possible out there.
Yeah, it's seeing a bigger world. It's not that they're ignorant of it. It's just, they're busy doing their own thing, and they may be in a very tight space and don't have the benefit of outside research.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I guess one of the other things I want to hit on, is what we do since we have some public funding and we complement that with private funding and fees. But the federal government wants an estimation of value for what does it pay for. What are we doing in our community that benefits with the funds that we receive? What is our impact? And that's how we define those. And that is impacts. And those impacts can range from newly created sales that are saved with our work, newly created jobs that are saved, cost savings and investment and the like. And we measure that every year with a customer, and it's done independently, and they rate us on how we brought value to their organization. And I ran some numbers. I just have the IMEC numbers for Illinois, but in 2019, we communicated with thousands of Illinois manufacturers. We assisted over 800 companies with 1,000 value-added projects. We've saved or created 4,600 jobs, and I don't mean we, but we collectively as ourselves and the manufacturers. 4,600 jobs were created or retained with over 1.2 million in average new and retained sales per project. So every time that we did something on that value average, they benefited from that. And it turned out to be on average a 19-to-1 return on investment. For every dollar invested, 19 back. The big number is $436 million in aggregate impact to the Illinois economy from our work in 2019. That's impressive. And that wasn't just us. It was what did the companies that we worked with, what was their carry out on our work as well. And it's been about a $5 billion aggregate impact with our work since 2000. So we do make a difference, and we're very proud of that. And we want to carry that forward.
Well, Jeff, I was always impressed with your process because I know you've got the third party that comes in and reviews the work you've done with the manufacturer, but also you see that on the front end. So I recall as working with you with others that, you take those same ideas before you even set up a project and say, well, what's the difference this project is going to make? It's not just, hey, let's go spend some money and hope good things happen. You actually design your projects with these ideas in mind. That is this to save jobs? Is this to create revenue? Those kinds of things. So I always thought that really gave a manufacturer a good start on a project because they knew exactly what they were looking for to happen.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that I came over, to be honest with you. I had my share in my career of, we didn't have the resources or we didn't have the expertise to do something within my organization. So you bring in an outsider, and it tends to be a professional. The one thing that would drive me crazy with consultants and outside help would be they could point to where my problems were, and then they would send me an invoice and then wait for my check without any implementation. And we kind of designed ours a little bit differently. We're big on the implementation. That's part of our mission, be it small or large. And we do work with 2-man machine shops, 10 welder shops, up to 500 employees, and sometimes even larger organizations. But we're heavy on implementation. And we walk through that project. First of all, we'll scope it and make sure that it is actually going to do what you need it to do, and that you have the resources and the commitment to do that. And then we'll teach the training, or we'll teach how to implement the solution. Sometimes we'll do it right alongside you. We like the train the trainer model. That way we can walk away and or move on to another project and you're self-sufficient. There are some that would like us to continue on and to actually implement the project, and we can do that, for instance, in a ERP assessment and installation. Sometimes it's just easier, and we work in conjunction with the manufacturer. But yes, we set the goals, we agree at the beginning, we work through a number of commitments and make sure that we've got the resources, and then we follow through.
Yeah. And like I said, just that, I think it gave manufacturers a lot of confidence moving into it with that amount of clarity at the beginning of it, as well as they understood what their commitment was too, because sometimes, as you say, they think, oh, the outsider is going to do all this work. Well, no, almost in every case, they have to commit to a fair amount of work too.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you think of quality systems sometimes. All right, I recognize I have a need for a quality system. Either I need it for compliance or, I want to get better. And, make me up a manual, and that manual sits on the shelf and then that's not a quality system, and we really don't want to be part of that. You have to be actively engaged in it because it's going to be of benefit to you. And it takes the commitment and the involvement of the manufacturer and their team.
Yeah. So I know you've been staying in touch with manufacturers. What kind of things are you hearing?
Wow. That's going to be a list. We discussed this a little bit, and I think that there are obviously a number of things that are impacting manufacturers. And I'll rattle off about 10, but I want to focus on a few and then give some of the feedback that we've heard. I'll do that from my own perspective in the Quad City area. Certainly, COVID, epidemic-related issues, and it's all about safety at that point in time. We've got the COVID-related items. The manufacturers want to make sure that they're ensuring their employee health, that they have a safe operation, that they are taking the distancing, that doing the things that are necessary if they've been deemed essential. If they're even open. Most of our manufacturers are. In this space, we're very fortunate with that because in retail and food, that isn't necessarily always the case. But in manufacturing, I've not run into one of mine that had not been deemed essential, so they're open. But they have to ensure the safety of their people. They've got to cut up the floor, identify the stations, separate in the break room, temperatures. I've seen a number of, some of them take temperature, some of them take a poll and leave it up to the individual. But certainly it's different than what we were doing this time last year. In addition to that, if they do have a case, that throws in a whole new set of requirements. How do I clean on a routine basis, but also how do I clean and decontaminate my operation? Certainly a challenge. Again, it's new. I think we've evolved and folks have learned along the way in these 8 or 9 months, but it's still different than what we had faced. Another impact is growth. There are many lost sales, either from closures, supply chains close up, you lost customers that were there and now they're not. Certainly there's impacts in that. And we in this community are fortunate to have some very big manufacturers. Our benefit is that we catch that cold a lot sooner when there's an issue. And it's amazing how many folks are in the chain within the area. And so if one goes in a reduction, everybody feels it. So that leaves me with, okay, now I have to find something to either make up that time, reduce my staff, or reduce my operation. And clearly nobody wants to do that. That kind of leads to the other trend that we're seeing or impact is challenges in workforce. This is probably the most frustrating for me because we like to have answers, but the answers to this one are very difficult. We had trouble finding skilled and non-skilled workers in February with 3% unemployment. Now we're at 8%. There were some premiums in place that impacted folks coming back to work, but we're still in a situation where my manufacturers can't find the workers that they need. And there may be transportation issues. There may be competitive wage issues. There's a portion that are hard to have show up and stay for training. I've talked to 4 this week who said, we've got people that leave on the second day. We don't know why. We can't get an exit interview. And there are some theories behind that. And certainly the stress of not having kids in school have put stresses on parents who tended to send their kids to school for their schooling and they can go to work. If that isn't happening, then somebody's going to have to maintain the childcare. Childcare providers may not be available. Transportation, reliable transportation seems to be an issue as well. So we've got a number of factors in that workforce challenge. And that's the one you would like to say, boy, we could solve that this week. But many of our schools and some of our apprenticeship programs are trying to solve that and fill that skills gap. But that's going to take some time. And we need a short-term solution now. You need people now, but you do need to build for the future. And many have. It's just we'd like to see a lot more kids go through those programs to see that manufacturing is a great option and start early. And some of the high schools have, again, with the technical schools and whatnot, but that's going to take a little bit of time. So that's clearly something that we see daily. Technology is, folks know that they need it in the short term and in the long term. So when we have that pressure of workforce, you look for solutions of, okay, well, if I can't get this done now, can I have automation that helps me supplement my practices? And can I make it work? Can I get the payoff? Do I get the return on investment? How does that work in my operation? So we see a lot of planning and looking forward on technological advances, which is great, but it isn't cheap and it doesn't happen right away. So it's something that has to be planned out. And there are, to our advantage, things in technology are ramping up very quickly. Everything's getting attached to the internet. We've got 5G coming along that's only going to enhance that. Every tool, every move from driving productivity within the system is going to be aided by technology. And so that's going to come on us one way or the other. And if you can adapt it to your practices and get good data and manage from that data and drive improvement along with some, tools of lean or quality and continuous improvement, quality improvement, that's going to make your operation better. That's going to make it more efficient. That's going to reduce your need for extra folks by driving out waste in the system. But it's also going to open up some opportunities for folks who may have been placing pieces into a lathe or pieces into a CNC machine. If we can get some automation to do that, that either provides them the opportunity to learn how to become operators in new technology environments and taking care of equipment, or moving on to other tasks that may have more benefit to the organization and leaving mundane tasks to some form of automation. So that's clearly on our horizon as well, but something we face as far as questions and probing on, what are the type of things that I should be looking at? Certainly that comes up. One around the corner is going to be cybersecurity. And we read reports on attacks. Last week, I heard that the most common attack has been on municipalities and hospitals now, that they'll lock down a hospital even in this pandemic for ransoms. And we know the horror stories and we see the spam and we get the calls, but that happens. And you have to protect your environment. And so there's going to be a need, whether you are in the government contracting or not, to harden your system. You got to protect what's there from internal and external threats. The data that you have not only is valuable, it allows you to operate and maintain your operation and be profitable. If you get locked down, or if you lose some of that, or if you lose some intellectual property, that certainly is not something that you want to happen. So you got to harden your system. And then if you happen to be a government provider or in the Department of Defense cycle as a prime or as a subcontractor, you're going to have to meet some compliance levels that you may not have had to before. Some of that involves protection, as we have talked, from attack, but certainly the protection of information and how that's accessed. So that's going to be another need for the upcoming year.
Yeah, Jeff, I thought too, the dilemma for manufacturers is you can't just be a little isolated island either, because to do business with suppliers, with customers, you do have to be online. And to really get the benefits of some of these things with respect to cloud technologies, it's inherent that you are online. So it's sort of, you can't just wall yourself off and say that's going to work. You have to actually have a good defense, but you still have to participate.
You have to be out there. If you're not, you're going to get left behind. I mean, think about all the things that we not only email, but you're doing file transfers for drawings. You're storing your customers' work and drawings. They're storing yours. You've got all the potentially rich Social Security and personal information out there. It can be valuable information in many places, but you're right. You can't sit and pull yourself off the internet. And so many pieces of our software and our applications now are same as service. So they're cloud environments. And that brings, certainly there are some that are very secure, but it's a different environment than when you housed your own and you had your own program. So luckily we've got professionals that can assist with that within our network, not necessarily within the IMEC employment operation, but we build a network of providers to reach out specifically for those type of expert services. Those are certainly the impacts, but that's a lot to think of and to think around. And IMEC went out to leaders in manufacturing here in the last 6 months and took what we call an organizational needs assessment. And that's really going back to the leaders of manufacturing and saying, look, what are you going to be working on in the next 6 to 12 months? We want to be there to help, but we need to understand, we know what we think we should be, but what are you thinking? And so some of the feedback came in 4 buckets. It was, these are the things that I need immediately. I'm going to be working on these immediately. And that happened to be growth, recovering sales, working on my leadership to make sure that my folks have the pulse of the organization, are leading effectively, are leading to drive efficiencies and making their operation the best that they can. The safety involved around not only just standard OSHA safety type issues and making your environment safe, but the COVID related items. There's still some compliance and still going to have to be some effort focused there. Driving productivity. And then, of course, the workforce is the immediate need. Then we looked at urgent, but not immediate. So urgent meant in the next 6 months. And some of those same categories came up, but strategy also came up. Do I need to realign my vision? Do I need to drop certain product lines? Do I need to bring new product lines on? Do I need to diversify out of certain markets that are heavy and insulate myself from these type of bubbles in the future? And then in addition to that, it would be data management, bringing in a good ERP system so that you could measure data from all different points, using data to make decisions and influencing your strategy. Those are the type of things that those leaders said, that's what I'm going to work on in the next immediate and in the upcoming 6 months. There were some things that were off of that, and that's the next bucket, which is 12 months. What I'm going to do in the next 12 months. That's after I do the immediate and the first 6 months. And that tended to be technology. And that doesn't mean technology isn't important or not thinking of it right now, but that tends to be a long-term solution and takes a lot of planning and building in to make it fit in your organization. So I think that's why that got pushed out a little bit, but certainly assessments now of what can happen in technology, they're taking those steps right now. Building for, I know that this is a capital investment that I'm going to make down the line, and implementation won't come until later. But so I think that's how that influenced that. And certainly supply chain is one that you feel the effects today. You can't necessarily solve it today, but you need to solve that in the next year and either bring in new markets, new suppliers. Do I reshore and get items domestically if I were just getting them overseas? Is that premium? Can I cover that premium? Does it make me more nimble? Maybe that's a better solution. And I think this thing tipped everything on its head. And in some ways, we're going to come out of this with some good findings, but it certainly challenges the system.
Yeah, I always appreciate with the small manufacturers that they've only got so much bandwidth. So I appreciate that they have to kind of tackle only a few things at a time in most cases.
Yeah, my heart goes out to them. If you're in a bigger organization, you have resources. And that's helpful. And when you're smaller, you can be a little more nimble and maybe get things done quicker. But boy, this has to be just coming at you like a fire hose right now, because you can't just pick and choose. I'm going to work on this today and this next week and this the following week. It tends to be all in your lap that week.
So one of the things you mentioned earlier about workforce, kind of an interesting I heard about, and I think maybe you were on that call too, where a community north of us was trying to put together a program to help people in the hospitality industry transition maybe into manufacturing type roles. And I thought, well, I don't know how it'll work, but it's a great idea to help people that maybe are challenged in continuing in their current jobs or, especially in things like hospitality, but giving them some help to make a transition.
Yeah, I think you have to be creative now, don't you? Opportunities like that. I think the one is going to be real interesting to watch. And here's where I think we have some benefit. And that is that, learning to work remotely by force may have been a great thing for some areas in your company. Certainly not the line, but if you can remove people that need to be on site, in the future, you might spend less on commercial real estate. Your dollars per employee per square foot, all of a sudden, I might need 50% of my operation for what I deemed as admin, and I might be able to put that to more use with money-making equipment and technology. So I think that might be a benefit that we will reap. The interesting thing to me will be how sales is impacted, because recovering your sales, regaining, re-earning, finding new sales is going to be a tougher environment now because we're doing it remotely. The number of conferences and in-person interactions will go down, at least short term. And if we find that we don't need to spend a couple $1 million on conferences, I know in my old businesses, that would have been, okay, well, that's good, but how do I reach my customer? I always relied on those 1 or 2 touch points during the course of the year and then follow-up visits. That may not be the case now. I've read a couple of studies here this week that show that remote and virtual meetings may be more effective than the old face-to-face all the time. And cold calling, certainly, but you just don't know. And I think it's untested, but it's going to be a different environment for the sales folks and for your teams who need to learn how to work remotely and interact with these type of tools and virtual calls. I think we're used to it now, but boy, in April we weren't, and we were pretty bad at it. Now it's kind of a standing joke that you're going to have a dog walking through and you're going to have a kid yelling, but that's life. And that's the way we have to work in this environment. So to watch how sales and the outreach, if it grows and how it grows, will be interesting.
I think, too, as you mentioned the thing about remote work, it occurs to me, I often talk to small manufacturers and, it's hard for them to attract a product engineer or a supply chain person to a small town in Western Illinois. Well, maybe in the future, you can hire them from where they are and still get the benefit of their skills and knowledge, and yet they won't have to relocate to where you are. And I realize some things will always still have to be on site and stuff like that, but I think this has shown us that there are some opportunities there.
Yes, I did hear a company who's multi-state say that. They tended to recruit from college towns, large college towns. It wasn't hard to get them to go to Nashville, Tennessee or to Atlanta, Georgia, but it was hard to pull them into the Quad Cities, even though you got a lot to offer. Remote piece can help bridge that gap. And I think that'll be a benefit, and certainly in those skilled type environments that are set up to accept remote.
Mm-hmm. So, Jeff, what kind of things are you going to be doing now with Illinois manufacturers? I know you guys have some programs, some things that you're really focusing on. What might they be?
Well, we're trying to address that question mark where, okay, I don't know what I need. I know where I want to go. And we've developed a tool, a couple of sets of tools. One is what we call a top shop benchmarking for machine shops and the like, to where they can kind of identify where they're going to be, what they're doing now, and how they compare to their, not competitors, but their peer group. That gives a good understanding of what I may need to work on. So that's certainly an initiative that we have. We also have a couple targeted for Industry 4.0 and automation technology. If a company is interested and wants to see what their future could look like and how I could use automation, our engineers will take them through an assessment, ask them, where they stand, do a little bit of briefing back and forth, and then provide them a report and research based on in their area. And those are done through the CARES Act currently at no cost to the company. So it's a very valuable service that can light the fire sometimes. It's a great opportunity to do some things that cost very little or don't cost much at all. We also have a reshoring effort going on now, trying to identify, and I know that the Chamber has done this, and I want to take this time to make sure that I compliment them. The Quad Cities Chamber is very progressive and have partnered with us in helping this area, not only identify some training and skills and then backing it up with funding, but also in this reshoring effort and what we call reshoring, but really it's matchmaking. How do we find people and manufacturers with needs in the Quad Cities? And then we have others that are making product in the Quad Cities. How do we put them together? And sometimes there's an opportunity there. And if it doesn't exist just within the cities, then how do we keep that in Illinois? And then beyond that, how do we keep that in the states? So we're involved in those efforts. And I know that locally, probably every chamber and every economic development commission is as well. But the Quad City Chamber has been a great partner and been very progressive in that. From the Illinois Defense Network and Department of Defense and the chamber itself, just saying, we believe in this and we're going to make the investment in the community. And then I should just mention one other, that we do have an innovation voucher that we funded ourselves. So there are some state funds available for training and sometimes low-cost loans in conjunction with Department of Commerce and different grants and incentives. We have been able to carry some of those forward. For instance, we became aware of the layoff aversion program back in April that would help supplement some of the expenses incurred for COVID. For instance, if you had to go buy new equipment for remote workers, if you had to decontaminate your plant, that it was an outside expense, and if it qualified, we were able to bring that to a couple of manufacturers in the Quad Cities. And we can do more of that by identifying what those needs are. But we funded an innovation voucher on our own in order to fuel advancement in technology, especially for new product lines, manufacturers looking for new product lines, looking to automate. There are some expenses out there that we can't pay for the equipment necessarily, but there are some supplementary expenses for engineering, research and design, additional training for folks. And so we put up we call it an innovation voucher that potentially could fund up to $25,000 of a project. It's a shared funding arrangement. You have to go through an application process, but those are the type of things that are out there to spur growth, to help buffet some of those expenses and kickstart that innovation for our manufacturers. So those are some of the things that we're doing along with our daily work of trying to find solutions, training, quality programs, instituting lean, trying to do things to drive excellence in manufacturing.
So as we wrap up here, what would you like to say that makes IMEC different? I know you've given a lot of great examples as you go along, but kind of wrapping up, what makes you guys different?
Well, I think the thing that makes us different as a not-for-profit, our mission, and I don't want to take away from for-profit consulting at all. We measure the success of our work with our manufacturers on the value that we bring. And we post that. And that's part of that impact reporting that we had talked about. But we can help manufacturers attain growth and compete globally. The better the Illinois economy is and the more jobs that are available. So our mission is small or large. Helping manufacturing is our mission. We're here to help the manufacturers in our community grow. And that means jobs. That means a better local environment. That means a better economy. That means a better standard of life for our folks and all the way through the state. So that's our mission, and that's what we live. And I think that's what makes us different.
Great. And I'd want to remind everybody that the website will include the links for all this in the show notes. But again, you have wonderful examples on your websites, as well as the other states too, of projects that you've done. So if people want to see, okay, what's a project look like? What does it look like working with IMEC? You guys have some just great examples of stuff shown on your website. So the contact information you'd like to share with the group.
Yes, they can reach IMEC either through our main site, which is imec.org, imec.org. If you'll have these in the show notes, I'll also include my email address and phone number for the locals, but certainly you can reach out through those two tools. And some of our assessments are there as well, and I'd like to put those as links in your show notes as well.
Absolutely. Sure. We'll have those. And then again, for people outside of Illinois, they can find their own state's MEP, I think, too, and access them.
If you happen to have those and they need guidance, have them call me and we'll put them in touch with their MEP.
Great. Well, again, thank you, Jeff. This has been very informative, and I think it's very useful for the small, medium-sized manufacturers to gain your insights that you've seen from the others, their peer groups. So I appreciate this very much.
Thank you very much, and appreciate your help in this.
And again, my thanks to Jeff for sharing his insights from the Illinois manufacturers in this crazy year. As a quick recap, we talked about who is IMEC, their mission, their expertise, some of the top areas of assistance and collaboration that they have. We talked about the trends that they are seeing, in 3 buckets: urgent, immediate, and over the next 6 months. And those trends tended to fall in areas such as creating growth, improving safety of operations and employees, improving operational outcomes with productivity and new processes, and then workforce development. How can we help continue developing our workforce of today and tomorrow? So what's up next? Well, we're going to continue a mix of solo episodes and interviews with experts, some in manufacturing, but also some in areas that can help you build your business. Also, in at least 1 episode a month, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts and ideas on becoming a silver entrepreneur and show how silver talent might be able to help you in your business. In our next episode, we're going to be talking about some new ideas for a silver entrepreneur. So, as always, I encourage you to visit my website, download the summary at the bottom of the podcast episode, and start your exploration of the ideas from this episode. And to get you started on your journey and to stay up to date on new episodes, please download the free worksheet, 3 Steps You Need for a More Productive Workday. Again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.